Hi guys. I just wanted to, check in, make sure everything's going okay, and just introduce the internal assessment for you guys. I know you've done one before, but it's probably good if you hear kind of my take on it and what I encourage you guys to do. So I'm going to take you through three different planning documents here. The one is the one that Ms. Stock has used, so you should be familiar with that. The second one will be the one that I've used in the past. And then the third is another one from another economics teacher. I think what I want you to see in all these is they're very much common. There's not a whole lot different from one to the other, maybe the way they're set up, but if you look at what they're really asking for, they're all very close to each other. Okay, let's start with this one that you've seen before. Look, my general advice on the IA is you have to remember that you're writing to an economics grader, someone who understands economics, someone who teaches economics. So for you to summarize what's going on in an article is for you to totally miss the audience that you're writing to. So remember, it's not a report. Any time you spend summarizing the article is wasted time. I don't know how your first IA went, but in my opinion, most of you guys should be fighting not to get to 750 words, but to reduce down to 750 words. You should have so much to say that 750 words, the limit, is a constraint, not something that you have to work towards. So that's what I'm getting at. It's not worth it to waste any of your time summarizing the article. That's why you attach the article, so that the person, can read it if they want to. Okay, think of it as a baking competition. Imagine there's a baking competition and, you show up with really, really poor ingredients. You've got bad flour, bad butter, I don't know, I don't bake, but anyway, you're trying to make cookies and you just don't have any good ingredients. Well, your cookies probably aren't going to turn out very well. On the other hand, if you show up and you bring some cookies from the store, well, they may be really good cookies, but, well, you're not going to win the competition because you didn't bake them. So the IA is a lot like that. You need to find an article that has plenty of good ingredients for you to talk knowledgeably about economics in it. So, a headline that says, I don't know, that Selena Gomez is going to come to Joburg and have a concert. Yeah, you might talk about some demand and supply issues there, but probably not. There's probably not enough good stuff in there to really talk about. On the other hand, you don't want to go too far. That would be like bad ingredients. You don't want to go get an article from The Economist or from the Wall Street Journal or something like that, because it's unlikely that you're going to say something that they haven't already said. So that's like showing up with your own store-bought cookies. So it really is, I like to stress, take your time in finding a good article. Don't just find one to get it done, but find something that is quality. And that's why, during the course of this year, we'll be looking at articles all the time so that you can be like, oh, hey, there's one that I want to do. So I'm not going to share that with the class. I'm going to keep that on my own because I want to use it for an IA. Okay, let's get into this document. Again, you've seen this before, so I'm not going to go over it too much. When you do find your article, I would print it immediately to PDF. Again, I understand most of you guys are probably going to be using the internet, and you guys understand stuff on the internet changes and goes away pretty quickly. So get a hard copy of it, or at least a digital hard copy of it. That's probably not a hard copy, is it? Anyway, get something that you can save so that you've got it. Okay, defining terms is important in the IA, and you ought to find a few terms to define. But really, this is the thesis of your IA. I mean, if you're going to write so you're writing your macroeconomics one, if you're going to write about minimum wage, or if you're going to write about, recovery from a recession, or the circular flow, or whatever it might be, well, that's going to be the term that you define. And the other theories that you might talk about to help yourself explain that, those are going to be the other terms that need to be defined. There's not a strict on the IA, there's not a strict requirement of definitions. They've changed the wording to usage of economic vocabulary. So obviously defining terms is part of that. And really you got to look at that as, well, this is what I'm writing the IA about. Okay, next we have diagrams. It is a requirement that you include a diagram. And really, if you include one, you really ought to include two. All diagrams need to be showing some sort of change. And anyway, that's that. If you can't find an article that you know what to do a diagram with, well, do a different article. Okay, finally, evaluate the change, and again, this ought to be, a good solid paragraph. You ought to be able to talk about what are the possible outcomes of the change that is occurring, what are the possible outcomes of the solution that maybe you're going to suggest. Okay, and again, essentially that's the heart of what the IA is about. Okay, this is the template I've used in the past, and again, you'll see that it's very common to what you've seen before. So I phrase this first part as well, you ought to be asking a question. Okay, so what is it that you're trying to solve? What is it that you intend to do? And that's the gist of these two boxes here. Again, definitions, like I said, those ought to be the thesis. And again, your diagram, you've got to find a way for this diagram to be dynamic, which means showing change. If there is specific information in the article, and it's better if there is, so if you can find a specific, a minimum wage, like I talked about before, if you can find what the minimum wage is, that's great. If it's not in the article and you go look it up, that's good too, but that's the sort of thing that you're going to need to cite because you got that information from somewhere else. Remember, elsewhere, you're not really expected to cite on the IA because you're just getting it from one article, but that is an example of what you might do. Okay, I like to encourage you guys to write down linkages to the article. So what I mean by that is if you're looking at an article that it talks about in January the government is requiring less usage of electricity, well, that's how you're going to make sure that you have strong links to your article throughout your commentary. And that is part, if you look at, I'm going to forget which criterion it is, probably C, but whichever criterion is application, part of application is that you are, you're not writing a commentary that's inspired by an article. You're writing a commentary that is about an article. So it is, to get back to it, you don't want to summarize, but it needs to be very clear that you are writing about the chosen article. So things like this, writing down, a few links to what your article says, can be a good way to do that. Okay? And then likewise here, you need to look at the arguments that you've put together and come up with some sort of evaluation, some sort of conclusion. Okay? This third worksheet I like because it's very, very specific. Both Ms. Stocks and mine are kind of open to interpretation and allow you to go a lot of ways. This one is much more, do this, do this, do this, and some of you might be more comfortable doing it that way, which is fine. Okay? So again, here you're going to maybe identify which section it comes from, etc., etc. So again, here the idea is that, well, we're going to ask a question, and that question is going to be evaluated at the end. So basically the idea is, what effect does government intervention have on externalities? Maybe that's that. This person does put in to summarize the article. Again, I really encourage you not to do that. If you're going to do that, of course, you're doing that in a way that you're bringing in other elements. You're using your definitions. You're introducing economic theory. So I don't really think about that as summary. It's summarizing your arguments. Okay, here's an evaluation question. And again, here's some examples down here that you might look at, and that's how you're going to get your evaluation done, is through asking this question. For diagram and application, again, like we've seen before, what problem are you trying to solve? And obviously you're going to show changes, and you're going to show the cause and effect, or the effects of the policy that you're going to choose or examine. Now, this person makes an interesting point. You don't have to have more diagrams in there, and doing a lot of diagrams doesn't necessarily give you any extra points, but it does give you more possibility of making a mistake and then losing points. So you need to be a little bit careful there. And also, you don't want to have where you've written 750 words simply talking about diagrams and left yourself no time for evaluation. And again, the point is, if you have a diagram there, you need to be talking about it. And it probably takes, for any diagram, it's going to take you at least a couple hundred words to analyze it effectively. So if you have two, well, there's 400 words, you know, a few definitions and introduction sort of thing, introducing a theory, there's another, you know, 100 words, and that leaves you only 250 words for an evaluation, which, to be honest, is a little bit short. So 2 diagrams is a good number to shoot for. Okay, again, here you've got a place to say, okay, well, as I analyze this problem, here's my main idea, here's my supporting details, etc., etc., etc. So as you can see, this one is a lot more complete. If you don't want to use it, use either mine or Ms. Stock's. Those are both good too. Okay, I'm going to want you guys to, when you find your articles, I want you to put your article, there'll be a Dropbox on Final Site, and I want you to put your article there for me to approve it. You can go ahead and get started on it, but I got to be honest with you guys, you should expect me to be pretty nitpicky about the articles you choose. I really feel like starting with a good article is very critical, so you know, I wouldn't get too much work done without me approving your the article that you find. So good, happy hunting, and look forward to seeing you guys. Latest word is that it might be about a week and a half from now that I'll be there and teaching you guys there. So looking forward to it, and see you later.